Human Resource Committee meeting to order. We have all the participants here. They're on the committee. And I have received no public we need to approve the agenda first.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. And no public comments as far as I'm concerned. And now we're looking at some important things from Brian.
So our first item today is about the employee benefits plan, with two changes highlighted. The other aspects of our employee benefits plan are not changing for the next school year. So these two new one new item, one adjusted item, I like your review, and then if you support the idea, we would need a motion to advance it to the full board for their consideration at the April meeting. The first item, if you could open the attachment, Rebecca, please, is our health insurance. And so we received an 8.4% rate increase from Dean Insurance, which was the cap that they had offered to us. And I think as we had looked at in prior meetings, this wasn't unexpected. Our medical loss ratio is running above 100% now. So it's kind of expected that they were going to try to recoup some of that revenue by charging us more to offer insurance. So they came in at 8.4. What the insurance committee has reviewed this year then is how might we look to address that. And there's really two ways for us to do so. One is to change the plan, which is what we did last year. We increased deductibles and co-pays. And the other way that you can address something like that is you can, as an employer, we can contribute more, which the budget indicates the early stages of the budget plan for a 5% increase of employer school district contributions, which then means that the employees would need to pay more as well. And so what we have in front of you is our health insurance with the same deductibles and co-pays, the same three offerings, with an increase of 3.4% passed on to employees because the district is covering an additional 5%. Do you have anyone have any questions about or anything to add, Steve, to that?
I think I just mentioned that this is a concept that other districts in the area have utilized, Lodi as an example. Rather than continue to impact the benefits, Lodi has gone in the direction that has increased the staff copay. As we talked about this at the insurance committee, one of the advantages of that approach is staff payroll deductions are tax-free versus if a staff member has a medical bill that they have to pay out of pocket. That is typically with after-tax dollars, unless they still have some limited flex benefits funds available, HSA funds available. So from a tax perspective, the committee focused on, there were some advantages to going this route and instead of the continued benefit changes. And also Brian reiterated with our committee, obviously the significance of the changes that occurred prior July 1st, probably difficult for us to have back-to-back years of benefit changes. So this just seemed to be a more logical route. Brian referenced the budget. Obviously, it's a balancing act. We are balancing increases in salaries, benefits, other potential new positions and funding increases like the middle school schedule changes. So we're balancing all of those areas to the best of our ability. And we did identify a 5% investment in health insurance. The other alternative would have been to go up to 8.4% and pull back on something else. But like With our overall budget approach, we tried to view it as a complete picture. Looking at offering competitive wages, competitive benefits, and still making program improvements. That's how we got to the 5%. And in general, the insurance committee took a look at this and preferred the route of additional payroll deductions that are tax-free as opposed to more potential out-of-pocket costs.
And, the only other thing I think I should have highlighted is that, as you'll know, the employer contribution for all three options that we offer in health plans is the same. So, in that way, we are is ambivalent whether an employee chooses to go in the traditional HMO plan, the high deductible HSA plan, or the point of service plan. The district will contribute the same amount and the employee makes that up. Because again, depending which one they pick, they have different premium costs in total. But also note that the HSA contribution, they are increasing. Those are larger amounts than what they were this year. Because again, the premium plus HSA of the high deductible account equals the same amount as the traditional HMO. And so to keep those two things equal, we increased the HSA amount. Otherwise, it would be disproportionately affecting those that went the route of the high deductible plan. But in the way it's structured here, you are equal, if you would, financially for each of the two. Is there any questions or further observations from the committee? Hearing that there isn't, and I know Joan and Kate, you guys have been involved in the committee, and obviously Judy, you want to make sure you're well aware of what we've been up to. This would be something that I would ask then if you support it to make a motion to advance it to the full board for their consideration.
We should advance this for consideration. Second. All in favor? Aye.
The second item, actually, I is called and I gave you a handout, and I'll give you this updated version, Rebecca, for attachment. This is updated even more so than what we had there. And so we'll just work off the paper copies that we have. And so this outlines in more detail the family reimbursement account. This was the concept that we had discussed at our last HR committee meeting. We've been reviewing again with the insurance committee. The concept is if an employee is currently enrolled in our health plan, and this would be all employees, all employee groups, and they will reduce the level of insurance that they're taking. So, if they're in the family plan, and they can reduce down to a single. You have to move at least one level down in terms of what the cost would be. Or if you're a family, you could go all the way to waive, or if you're a single, you could go to waive. If you move down in what you're taking for insurance, this is a program that would incentivize employees to consider that because they would receive two things. As you look at the front of this sheet, the two smaller boxes that are on the front page, on the bottom, there's a payroll incentive, and that is outlined there. If they go single to waive, family to single, or family to waive, different amounts that they would receive in their paycheck. And then we, as a district, would cover their out-of-pocket medical expenses for anyone that was in the insurance as they move to something different. And so this is kind of a potential twofold benefit to the district. The first benefit is that if someone goes this route, we now don't, we might have to help or assist them as they are experiencing costs in another plan, but we're not paying for their insurance. So there's a potential savings there because we're not contributing, to Dean Insurance to insure, Jane Smith employee. Second benefit is that if someone does go on to another insurance plan and they do have claims, we're capped in terms of what we would pay at the out-of-pocket maximum, which insurance is gonna go well beyond, costs will go well beyond that. But those costs don't go against our medical loss ratio. So someone who's having claims, for every employee, which all of us that are on the health plan, every time we get a claim, it increases our medical loss ratio number, which means that insurance has to pay out to take care of our people. They don't like to do that because it decreases their profit. We don't like it when our medical loss ratio goes up because then they charge us more for insurance. This then says, employees, if you have another option, this gives you a chance to consider it and financially perhaps be in a better spot. And so that would be the education aspect of this, is helping employees understand, how do you evaluate, stay on our plan and the financial benefits and costs to you, or go to someone else's plan and the financial benefits are costs to you. But this is as I mentioned in our previous meeting, an emerging benefit offering that we would be one of the first schools in our part of the state to offer. Not the first school, it's offered in kind of the southeast. There's a number of schools that are doing that, and there's some offerings of this in the Fox Valley. But in the south central part, we would be very early into this relatively. But this is a concept that is being reviewed by quite a number of school districts because it's being, I guess, educated or advocated. And I don't know how you combine those two words, but there's a little bit of both by insurance benefits advisors. And so I think it's something we'll see more. This would give us an opportunity to offer it earlier and perhaps be a giver of insurees instead of a receiver.
Brian, how does this work with cash and lieu employees that don't take insurance?
So this would be an option. So this is available to all employee groups. Currently, cash in lieu is only option for 2 employee groups: custodians and maintenance and teachers. It would remain an offering that would remain.
Could you have both?
You would choose one or the other.
One.
And again, again, that's part of the education part. There's a larger payroll impact for going cash in lieu, which in general probably incentivizes someone who doesn't expect to have claims. Because if you're getting cash and you're not going to spend it on co-pays and deductibles, you're probably better to go cash. This, for someone that has a choice between the two, is probably more of an incentive for someone that's likely to have claims, because you get a smaller cash piece, but your out-of-pocket part is totally covered. And so you don't have an insurance impact for procedures or co-pays. And so it probably appeals to a different type of person, but it's available to everyone, which is more equal, I guess, opportunity.
I like how this is laid out and explained, because it's a difficult concept to understand.
It is. I think it's going to, we're fully expecting that there's going to be a number of questions about this. again, we, in our conversations with USI, our benefits advisor, we are looking a lot at, CISA. Thank you. CISA 2, who recently, it's about a year out from offering this. It was not a high percentage of a large number of employees that took it. But, for those that did, it was helpful to them, helpful to CISA. And it did require a lot of education. And so we're this would be part of our timing is get the board, if you support it and the board supports it, it's approved in April. We have education about it for several weeks, and then open enrollment starts in May. And employees can ask more questions then still, and then they can choose which option suits their best.
Two things I would share. Number one, it's fair to state we would not really truly be able to calculate the savings until the process has gone through a full year. The reason for that is obviously we would know the initial upfront savings from the premium savings. So if someone waives or goes down a tier, what we won't know is the drawdown over that year and how the two of those numbers compare. All modeling indicates that the drawdown will not equal the premium savings. And that's been the experience of employers, which is why other employers are going to be exploring offering this. It's certainly not something our insurance consultants would have brought to us if the employers have put this in place or come out behind financially. But it's fair to say we won't know the true impact until, a full year has gone by. The second thing, the concern that could be expressed to board members, and I think it's important to just note it, would be an individual 2 years ago didn't accept the insurance when they initially came to us. We're in an employee group not eligible for ABP, so they just truly waived insurance. There will definitely be questions directed to the HR department about, okay, how do I sign up for this now? Right? I waived the insurance 2 years ago. The key financial component of these programs, when they're put in place, whether it's CISA 2 or Waunakee or any employer puts this in place, is it's a shared savings model. The district shares in the savings from the premium reductions. The staff member shares in the savings from the drawdown of the HSA, being able to turn in their out-of-pocket expenses. So it's built on a shared savings perspective. And that may be the one concern that may be ultimately directed to board members is, hey, 2 years ago, I'm in the classified staff group. I don't have access to ABP. I waived 2 years ago, and now I don't have access to this. It really is only able to be successful by moving forward. Now, the individuals that would have waived in the past, I think the important thing to keep in mind if they were eligible for benefits, made a decision that was right for them and their family at that time, that what our benefits were available to them wasn't in either their or their family's best interest for whatever reason. So it's important to note that it certainly was offered. They did make a decision and they've continued to make that decision. And ultimately, what I believe what we should be sharing with folks is if their situation has changed, there is an open enrollment process. There is a process through the, Affordable Care Act for coming back onto a policy if you qualify. And that's what we would be offering to those folks if their situation has changed. But that may be the one concern as a board member. You're not going to hear concerns from those who find this advantageous. You're not going to hear concerns from people who have no interest in doing this. It's going to be a small slice of folks who may have waived in the past, can't get ABP, and can't get this. So just note that.
this would be an item if the committee, you're in support of it. I would ask for a motion to take it to the full board for their consideration for offering next year.
Motion to move forward to the board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item is a continued, detail of wage increases for employee groups. So we have this split into two general groups. Item 6 refers to all of our non-unionized employees, administration support, administrative assistants, custodial and maintenance, and classified staff. And then closed session would be where we would consider or take a look at teacher options. So if you could look at the costing document, please. So what we have highlighted here is what the costs for those first groups of non-unionized employees would be. And so the total percentage of increase for the group is on the right. So as we're looking at, for example, the first box, administration and administrative support, the total increase for that group would be 5.16%. That's inclusive of two things. For this group, it would be rolling current wages up by the CPI, which is 4.12. And then within the administrative and administrative support, we do have what the catch-up provision, which is after an employee has been with us for 3 years, we review comparable Dane County positions and make sure that we are at average. And so my review of that this year has shown that quite a number of our peer districts have really made some movement in this group. And so this is at least in my time, the catch-up amount that we're using there is the largest one that we've had over a number of employees. And so that's how, again, those two add up to the total wage increase of 5.16. If we look at the other 3 employee groups, the total group percentage of each is 3 things. It is a roll-up of 2 things. It's a roll-up of wages by 4.12%. And it also includes all 3 of those groups moving within their salary structure. So moving a box, if you will, or a step. And that, again, they, based on action of the board and this committee a couple of years ago, those steps occur based on when someone is hired. If they're hired in the first half of the year, it starts on July 1st. If they're hired in the second half of the year, those step movements occur on January 1st. And so the 4.12 is the first column to the right of the current wages. The second column to the right of the current wages is step movement, total wages paid, and then percentage that group will increase. As you can see, we've got numbers that are fairly well aligned in terms of what that the group has or will receive. And again, across all of these employee groups, they're fairly well aligned. The one thing I would point out is that this is just for further review and questioning. But I am still working with Steve and Allie as they are finalizing more and making the budget more and more detailed. And we're getting more and more information about what our needs will be as a district and opportunities that we have within the budget. If we are able to, they are able to identify additional available monies. And again, we'll have that little bit cleaner picture, in April, later in April. I might come back and share new information with the board of how we could potentially try to take additional steps for some of these hourly groups, depending on what money is available. This is a one-step move for all three groups. But as we have done in the past, we continue to try to be, all three of these groups are below average compared to our peer districts. So we've tried to put more and more attention when possible every year. If that becomes available again, I will update this information, bring it back for your consideration. This is not an action item, but if, again, two things. One, if you don't have any concerns, or two, additional money doesn't become available in the budgetary process, this would be what we would advance for the full board's consideration in May, for us to have it in place for July 1st. We're not, again, this is opportunity to discuss a question, no motion needed.
Just a point of clarification, the catch up for the administrator and admin support. The 57,000, that will get us to the average.
At average,
At
correct.
average, not relative, okay.
So that is a group, those two groups. We keep ourselves at average. When we initially place an individual, we place them at average. Then we advance them for 3 years based on whatever the board decides, and typically that's been associated with CPI, at least in the recent memory. But then, we continue to monitor that, and if after 3 years, someone has dipped below average because other districts have given more time, more attention, or more finances, then we make sure we keep them at average. We don't advance. We do have some that are above average, but that is more of a reflection of what other districts have chosen to put in, more so than what we have. But we keep that as our goal, is average.
Like our staff that are above average, it's also a testament to longevity.
Yeah, typically.
Couple of things if I could just expand on. So the community survey is going out this week. And just as a reminder, one of the 3 financial questions that is being posed to the community is related to what you're really seeing on the screen. That's the class of the hourly employee groups. The fact that they are below Dane County comparable average. Brian calculated that amount. And it was included as a question for the community about whether or not the community would support increasing the hourly employee group's pay by approximately $1 million over 2 fiscal years. So that would be 25, 26, and 26, 27. So even though we're asking a question this November, it's a 25, 26 referendum question is when it starts. So what you're seeing on the screen is 24, 25, but keep in mind, there is a question out there. We do know as an organization, the long-term need to correct this issue for hourly employees would take support from the community through an operational referendum question. Second thing is when Ally and I complete our budget model process, we put into all salary lines the CPI, the cost of the CPI plus 2%. And the 2% is an estimate for administrative catch-up pay, hourly employee movement across the system, or members of the teaching staff who are earning advancement through points, master's degree, years of service, etc. So right now we're tracking below the 6.12%. So what Brian is referencing, depending on how the shared staffing conversation goes, which Brian is leading amongst our buildings right now, if we're able to maintain our FTE throughout that discussion, we believe there's some capacity to take a look at these groups, the hourly groups, to see if we can get some additional movement there. So that's what Brian's referencing as far as we want a chance before we bring this to the board in May to see if there's a little something else we can do for the groups that we know are currently behind average. So that's what we're working on. It's really gonna depend on whether or not that shared staffing process works itself out, or whether we end up needing some additional positions. But we feel confident outside of any additional FTE that we may be able to do at least a little bit here, make a little bit of an impact. And Brian knows which groups are the ones that are off the most from the county average. So when this committee meets again the next time prior to the May board meeting, we'll have a proposal if we're able to do anything extra in this area.
The only thing I would expand on, Steve had mentioned shared staffing. What he's referring to is each building has its particular number of FTE or employees. And it's rare if there isn't, you know, they might need a little bit more. For example, I need a little more French than I have teachers available. And so then we see, you know, a French teacher that's based in middle school might travel to help the high school, or someone from the high school might travel to help deliver classes to the intermediate school. And so, what, you know, we're in the midst of right now is, you know, buildings are seeing what their enrollment is for next year at the high school and middle school. They're seeing what students have taken for electives and what their enrollment increases are expected to be. And then we see what do you have for teachers? What isn't covered that we need to cover? Is there anyone that's got available FTE? And then we try to cover all those needs internally before we would go out and hire a new person to, you know, an additional FTE to try to cover those things. And so that happens every year. And we're, you know, working through that at this time. So. Are there committee questions, thoughts?
So there's nothing to advance to the board.
At this time, no. So as Stephen mentioned, we'll likely meet early May, which will hopefully relate to these groups and to negotiations with teachers, which is kind of that last item on our agenda, which is a closed session discussion as it relates to the negotiations. So we do need a motion to adjourn to close at this time.
Motion to adjourn.
Next.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Supposed to be by roll call, but that's okay.
Katie?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.